Now, you're an academic, you lecture at university, you carry out research, you're an academic psychologist, and I know that many academic psychologists are, shall we say, at least somewhat dismissive of the type approach in general, and tools like the MBTI in particular. How would you respond to some of the sort of criticisms that they come out with?
Give me a citation. That's how I respond. Okay, you want to
And if
talk
they said
academics?
Pittenger 1996 for whatever.
Yeah, well, there's an article I wrote. I know you kind of mentioned it at the top, and um, I referenced that article. The article's in defense of the Myers-Briggs. I wrote it independently before I met you guys, and so I looked at that one article, and that's the one article everybody points to, and I really break down that article has a lot of problems with it. Its intent was to talk about the Myers-Briggs with regard to helping somebody choose a career, so that's what it's about, and its criticism of the Myers-Briggs broadens its lane, but it really does kind of stay in that lane of its usefulness for career development. And I have issue with its outcomes on that too. But what we find in that article is that really, if you compare those results, I won't get into the nitty gritty. If folks are interested, they can take a look. But if you look at the stats of that article, and you compare it to the reliability, validity of, say, the Big Five or any other kind of academically recognized personality test, it's no better. It's no worse. It's almost exactly the same. Um, and what the Myers-Briggs has going for it, of course, as we started this conversation with, is that it is based in theory, right? Somebody said,
Yeah.
this is how I think the world works, and they went out and tested it. And sure enough, we've got some results that say, well, this is one way to look at human psychology in terms of personality. Other tests don't. They're sort of shooting in the dark, looking for, P equals less than 0.05. And once they get that, okay, that must be my theory then. That's a bit problematic, right? It doesn't,
Okay.
and it comes out on the other side, I would say too, because it doesn't ground that theory in a way that's accessible to people. And that's why nobody talks about their big five type as if you could, right? Because the Myers-Briggs is grounded in a theory that thinks about people the way people think about themselves, and then puts it back together in a way that people can understand. People can think about
Okay.
the difference between introvert, extrovert, somebody who leads with their thoughts, with their feelings, somebody who's really literal, or somebody whose head's in the clouds, right? We already have the sense of folks. And if people are interested, I would say go look at that first half of Jung's typology chapter before he gets into delving into the different types. He's basically giving this thesis of the ways in which we tend to think about personality, the ways that we've done it classically up until what for him would have been modern science, and then he delivers on his own theory. So it's not this pie
Yeah.
in the sky thing. It really is based in a way that people think about people. And for psychology to be useful at all, it's got to work for us, not for computers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, as human beings, one of the ways that we operate is by seeing how we're similar to a different other people and how we can
Mhm.
therefore work with them. And the MBTI plays right into that. It looks at
Right.
those differences between and type generally, looks at those differences between us and that person, but tries to look at it in a positive way and seeing how we can actually work together or play together or live together rather than putting things on a scale which may look more scientific, but actually, ultimately, may be less useful for human beings.
Absolutely. The only place, I don't want to beat up on the big five. Maybe I do a little bit, but the only place that you really see, the big five used is in academics. It's the only place you see it. I don't see it used much in the business world. You certainly don't see it used much in kind of the casual, folks just trading personality types or talking about that sort of thing. The only place it gets used is in academics, and it's got some good stuff going for it for that. It correlates really well. It's easy to regress. It's easy to think about and calculate in terms of all of these other variables that you might be looking into in psychology. But again, when you pull it off the paper and you try to talk about human difference, how is Kathy different than Mike, right? Well, all you can really say is what's on the page. Well, he's more extroverted. Well, what does that mean? Well, he's more extroverted, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't break down the way the Myers-Briggs does, or these other function tests.
Yeah. I think that, the Big Five, well, any trait-based questionnaire is very useful to academic psychologists because of the stats that lie behind the way that is accepted into that world. But you can do things like factor analysis easily. You can do correlation analysis easily, which has been the mainstay of academic psychology since, I guess,
Yes.
the 1920s, really, or earlier. Yeah. I read a paper a little while ago, which I will share if you remember. It was called The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, Mainstream Psychology, an Analysis of an Evaluation of Unresolved Hostility, which I thought was a wonderful title for a paper. It was in something called the Journal of Beliefs, I think, which sounds like a very interesting
Very cool.
publication to look at.
Oh,
Now,
yeah, what came out of that? I'm curious.
I didn't quite catch what you said there, Clay.
What's the take from
I
that
think
article?
that the take of that really is that the two approaches are actually closer than many trade theorists would suggest. They're essentially looking at the same ballpark. They're just different ways to look at the same ballpark. There may be things about type theory which some type theorists could think about modifying, i.e., is the human psyche really absolutely divided into two poles? Which actually no type theorists would look at anyway, because we know we all do both sides.
Right.
And there's lots of things the trade theorists could leave behind in order to be together. But sadly,
Right.
they probably never will in the short term because camps are too entrenched. So I
Indeed.
thought that was an interesting take on things.